I heard you trained the Secret Service.
Secret Service, Homeland, FBI, NSA, the full shebang. I had created this framework for influence and persuasion. I'd started it when I'd started my PhD, and through being a professor, the Secret Service reached out to me and invited me to come and train it. If someone uses instantly, they become less trustworthy.
Give me the Disney example.
This is why scarcity and time restrictions are so effective. If you have someone who is not being super cooperative, you might think in your head, I'll just try and use an ultimatum. But I use a technique called pants yourself. The mistakes he made were the same mistakes that I see so often. If you leave people hurt, you never know when they're going to try and hurt you back.
Let's define social engineering first, because I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this is what those people do when they ask you to send them crypto into Indonesia or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so social engineering has a really negative connotation. People think that it is just scamming and trying to get passwords and social security numbers and things like that. And that is absolutely a part of social engineering. But that is the malpractice of it. That is the manipulative side of it, where you have actual bad actors. Social engineering in general really is just getting information from someone or influencing someone to make a decision. That's really all it is. Kids use social engineering. You know, if I ask mum, hey mum, please can I have a cookie? And mum says no, I'm going to go to dad and pretend I haven't spoken to mum and ask dad for a cookie, as if mom hasn't just said no.
So my 3-year-old already does this.
Yep.
And I'm like, did mommy say it was okay? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, did you ask mom? Yes. And I'm like, okay, so that part's true. But the previous part was not true. And then I'm like, why don't you go ask mommy now? And she'll come back and say, like, mommy said, and then she'll just tell me a story about something random to try to distract me. And I'm like, it's pretty good for a 3-year-old, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and they'll look, really sad before they make a request. They might cry a little, or they give you the baby, I really want it. Oh, okay. And that emotion isn't there. It's a false emotion because they want to get what they want. And they don't think in their head, I'm going to use social engineering. It's just something we naturally do. But the art of social engineering is understanding really how people respond to emotions, how to influence decisions, how people think, and then utilizing that for your best interest.
So maybe we separate influence from manipulation then. Can you do that?
So yes and no. I like to separate them with intention because they are one and the same thing. The same tactics you use to influence, like if I'm selling a car, I can use those same tactics to do it for my best interest or because I think this car will actually really benefit these people. The difference between manipulation and influence is really intention. So if your intention is to get someone to do something, regardless of the consequences to them, so it may cause psychological harm, and okay, fine, I don't care. That's manipulation. Influence is that lack of psychological harm. It's either in your best interest or I influence you to build trust, so we build a good relationship, so you work with me. That's influence. If you have intention to cause psychological damage or any harm, then that is classed as manipulation.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I always wonder, do you ever look at those scams, like the scams where people send money to, an Indian scammer or Pakistan, whatever, using like Apple gift cards? I always wonder what the people on the other end of the phone are like. You kind of have to be a really evil son of a bitch to rob an 80-year-old of their life savings. You really do.
Yeah, and the way that they do it is it's dehumanizing the person on the other end. So if you just see them as a target and you just see a goal and you don't humanize that person, it makes it really easy to get what you want. And it's a tactic that I found that terrorists use in radicalization. They dehumanize the other side, so it makes it very easy to now move forward with the mission because we're not going against people, we're going against a problem. And scammers really do that same thing. They dehumanize the target just to get what they want. And there are some really awful cases. I've seen videos where people have recorded phone calls where, you know, they've pretended that they've been in a car crash and they're on the phone to a scammer. The scammer's asking for could you please provide your card number so we can continue with this transaction? And they're like, I've just been in a car accident. And the scammer's on the phone like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can you access your card?
Right.
Though? And, you know, that level of just complete lack of empathy or care is hard to consider. But also the fact that it's over a device, which is often how social engineering occurs online or over the phone, there's a buffer. So it's not like when you're face to face with a human, it becomes harder to try and engage in manipulation because you can physically see that person. So it's harder to dehumanize them. Over the phone, there is that buffer. So it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't know anything about them. They're just a target.
Yeah, I've seen, I mean, we've all seen this in action, right? Where I was reading something the other day about this terrorist attack a while ago. This is several decades ago, but they shot an old Jewish man in a wheelchair and then dumped his body overboard. This is the PLO. And I was just thinking like, man, you got to get to a crazy dark place in your head and probably already be a sociopathic, malfunctioning human being. Because I don't know. I guess my question to you, this is way deeper of a cut than I thought I would get here early in the show, but do you think anyone can get to that level of dehumanizing somebody? Or is this like the combination of already a sociopath and radicalized and trained to dehumanize the other side?
That is a really great question, and one that the answer is not particularly comforting, because the percentage of people who are actually psychopaths is very low, just like the percentage of people that are genuinely classified narcissist in my clinical definition is very low. So to get to that point, you would think, oh, they have to have these psychopathic tendencies or be a psychopath because we function via empathy. There are a lot of things that decrease empathy. It's been shown in the research that as we obtain more power, naturally, it can subdue empathy processes in the brain. So as you become more powerful, that drive to get more power reduces empathy processing. And which is why it's important for us to remind ourselves that we need these things. That's why it's really important to work on self-development. So there are natural things, or there are processes that naturally decrease empathy. But when it comes to these scammers, especially these big ones we see, a lot of them are based in, say, India. Often they're a whole organization. And it does work in a similar way to radicalization, and actually very similar to how the psychological process works of abuse victims. You take an individual and you start to chip away at their sense of self. Maybe you find someone who has gone through trauma, someone who is not very regulated with their emotions, someone who is struggling, someone who's a little lost. You chip away at their sense of self. And now you feed in a new identity. They feel a little lost. Now you make the other person the enemy. Now you make the goal to get that thing, and these other people are stopping you. And with radicalization, it can be that they have a huge amount of empathy for their side, but you've now made their whole identity about protecting this side and the other side is the enemy. And you do see these people that have become scammers they have been recruited. Often, again, same as individuals who become radicalized, often they're very, very lost individuals, people who have gone through quite a lot. So they're the perfect people to now turn into soldiers for your mission. And it's that case of, you see young kids, usually the bully was the bullied. You know, they've suffered and now they want to get their own back. They're very mad at the world, and that anger at the world and that self-righteousness of, why have I suffered? It's now my time to win and everybody else's time to lose. It's a very fine line for someone who is suffering to walk that.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is just top of mind because of that $15 billion crypto seizure that the Department of Justice had the other day from a scam site in, I think, Cambodia. And then they sanctioned Prince Group, which is the Chinese guy, the group behind this big scam. I think it's the largest seizure in history by like 30x or 50x or something like that. And it's just a crazy amount, and that's like thousands of people's life savings in cryptocurrency is in this that got seized, which is incredible. And unfortunately, there's a million. It's whack-a-mole. There's a ton more of these because they're so profitable. In Cambodia's GDP is 50% made up of these scam sites. I think, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think it's literally like doubled from the illicit trade or the ability to run these scam sites with impunity in Cambodia. So back to influence. So it sounds like what you're saying is it's essentially getting what you want because people want to collaborate with you instead of manipulation where they're giving you what you want because you've tricked them into doing it, essentially.
Yeah, with manipulation, it's really people do as you ask because they fear the consequences of not doing it. When it comes to the principles that I teach, because you can have influence that are still getting what you want, but at the expense of the other person, it may not cause harm. It's just not in their best interest. The way that I like to think about influence, like I wrote in The Upper Hand, is about it being mutually beneficial. And it's not about how do I get what I want. It's how do I make you want to give it to me. And when you think about it like this, instead of just short-term tactics, they're long-term tactics, because it's very easy to use things like fear. Now, if you don't do this, there's going to be a quick consequence. You might make a sale, right? But that person isn't going to go home to their friend and talk about how great that sale was, and then their friend's going to come back. So you may get that win, but you just get that win. When it comes to these long-term tactics, you might not get that win straight away, but maybe they go home, they think about it, they come back to talk again, and maybe you get the win later. Maybe it's 3 conversations down the line, but you're building a relationship, and then they tell their friend about the experience they had. You've built up trust, you've built up rapport. So it's about the long-term influence rather than just how do I get what I want quickly. It's about how do I actually make this something that is lasting and built on connection and cooperation.
So pro-social engineering, or just what used to be regular social engineering, pro-social engineering, using it for good. And it's great because, again, social engineering does have that bad rap. It's something that only con men use. But an example of using it for good, and I'm sure there'll be multiple, but one that I'm particularly personally proud of, I used to, my girlfriend, like many girlfriends, I would say, where do you want to eat? And she would say, I'm married now, but she would say, I'd say, where do you want to eat? She'd go, I don't care. And I would be like, oh, not every day, every day. And so I finally decided to say, guess where I'm taking you tonight to eat? And she would go, oh, God, I don't know. And I'll go, yes, you do. You know. And she'll go, is it the new noodle place on State Street? And I would go, oh, God, you're so good at this. Yeah, of course. Yes, exactly. I told you knew. And then she's like, and then after like a few weeks of this, she's like, how do I get it right wait a minute. So that's social engineering for good, I feel like. And by the way, feel free to steal that. It works at least 5 times in a row.
Will. And the thing with social engineering is it can be really hard to use it for good because we're emotional beings. So if you have someone who is not being super cooperative, you might think in your head, I'll just use the negative approach. I'll just try and use an ultimatum, but ultimatums are just threats disguised as choices. Or you try and use more of a pushy tactic. But one thing I always teach people is you have to remember that other people's emotions generally have nothing to do with you. And always assume positive intent with other people. And that's really helpful when it comes to influence, because someone might be a little aggressive or someone might be in a bad mood, but it's likely nothing to do with you. We often just get the brunt of other people's emotions. For example, we had, I created an elicitation course. It was an online elicitation course. And our courses are very expensive, but I wanted to create something that was accessible to the everyday person. And our courses just aren't, because they're thousands of dollars. So I wanted to make something that was just a couple of $100s, but because of the price, we couldn't have it interactive because it wouldn't make sense. Yeah,
you can't have a coaching element. It's not scalable.
Yep, we just couldn't. So I wanted to create an audio course so people could get at least a starter of elicitation, some scientific principles and some practical tools. So we put the course out and I was really excited because, again, I was a professor. So it felt like I got to kind of reach students again, rather than just being in the corporate world. And we were getting a lot of really good responses, but then we got an email from a student And they'd sent a couple of emails asking questions, and they'd reached out via my personal website asking a question. And we had to email back and say, actually, this isn't an interactive course. We just can't have it interactive because of the fees. And they sent back a pretty aggressive email and said that, for this price, they would expect some kind of interaction, and ChatGPT could write something like this, and they want their money back. So my team had responded and said, well, the reason that, we have our courses is we don't use AI for anything that we do. Like Dr. Abbie created this course, everything is based on their expertise. And we were pretty upset. And that was something that really got to me too, because science is so core to who I am. And I put a lot of love into that course. So I took it personally as I first did okay, well, that is offensive to me. And then I sat back and I'm like, okay, their emotions have nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him via email, and instead of reflecting back his emotions, I realized the best way to influence someone and to create that positive relationship is not to take those emotions personally. So I reached out, and one of my principles in my book is about self-identity, that it feels really good. We have this image of how we are, and it feels really good when people confirm our image of ourselves. So I thought about his email, and he's clearly someone that is seeking knowledge, because he listened to our course and he was annoyed that he wasn't getting more answers to his questions.
Right.
So I reached out and I said, thank you for emailing. It is really impressive to see that you're so passionate about what you do. And, I was a professor, and seeing curiosity in my students was something that I love to see. And that's a really great trait that's going to get you far. So don't ever lose that. I'm sorry this course didn't meet your expectations. We'll give you a full refund, but I'm really impressed with your curiosity. And it took him a couple of days, and he emailed back and thanked me for my email and said that not many organizations would give a refund. So thank you so much. And he's going to use that money and put it into my book. And
wow.
He then came back
40 copies of your book.
Yeah. Well, he then read my book, and it's about influence and cooperation and focusing on using those positive tactics and building connection. And he emailed back a little while later and said that he finished the book, and he's actually reflecting on his own management and interviewing style. And he's going to step away and stop reading what he has been reading and focus on cooperation building. And now him and I have a great mentor-mentee relationship. He emails me with some questions sometimes. I give him book recommendations, and he wrote a wonderful review. He bought my book and wrote a wonderful review on Amazon, 5-star. And that relationship could have been a very negative one. But again, just stepping back and thinking about the long-term influence of people's emotions don't always have anything to do with you.
Yeah, well, I would say most of the time I get into any sort of conflict or tussle with anybody online, I'm hungry, or I'm tired, or I write back with, somebody sends me a crazy nasty email, and I'm like, hey, like all this stuff, are you okay? And they'll write back like 3 weeks later, wow, you know what? I was not okay, man. Here's what was going on, if you really want to know. And I'm like, I'm really sorry to hear that. That sounds terrible. I'm really sorry about your dog or whatever. And then they're like, I feel so bad. And I'm like, don't feel bad. I was a faceless nobody email address. Like, forget about it. And then those, 5 years later, those people are still listening to the show, or they buy, they buy your stuff and they gift it to their whole family. It's better than being like, oh, you're mad at me. I'm going to make you feel even worse about that because my ego is wrapped up in you being offended. Now I'm offended that you were offended. I don't even know what the whole thing is about. And it's like, I remember I learned this lesson a long time ago because somebody sent me something nasty and I sent something nasty back. I was probably in college or law school. And I remember this girl that I was friends with goes, hey guys, why don't you just put them on the table and measure them? And I was like, that is pretty close to what we're doing right now. Yeah, you're not wrong. And we both kind of laughed about it. We were like, well, she got our number, I think, on that one.
Yep. And that is why, actually, when it comes to influence, putting your ego to the side is one of the best tactics, because it gets in the way. Because if someone is getting something you want, or building that relationship comes at the expense of your ego. We're like, oh, no. I need to act this way. I need to pretend.
Need to be right.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is one thing. We love to be right. We love to be right. As human beings, correcting someone feels so good. You know, when someone uses the wrong there, oh, doesn't it just feel so good to be like, that's the wrong there.
You put the star and you write the right one, and they're like,
it feels so good. Because you're like, look how smart I am.
Right. Your whole point that you made that was totally valid, ignoring it, just going to correct your grammar.
Yep. Or when someone has made a great point, but they made a spelling mistake, it's like, I can't wait to respond and ignore everything you said, but correct your spelling. Right. And that's an ego thing, because it places us at this kind of above them in this superiority of I'm right, you're wrong. But what happens when we have been corrected is it creates embarrassment, and it creates often shame, and it causes.
I mean, that's why I'm doing it to you in the first place on the internet.
And it feels good, the one doing it, but the one receiving it doesn't feel good. So do I now want to build a relationship with you? No,
not really.
Not really. That's why if you want to influence someone long term, trying to suppress that ego, and when you really want to correct, I use a technique called pants yourself. And pants yourself means show your vulnerability. So instead of when someone has said something wrong and you really want to correct them, or maybe someone's being a little bit more aggressive and you want to point something out, actually pantsing yourself and say, why don't we take a break here? Because I'm struggling to provide you the services that you need, or to communicate in the way that I think will be effective. So let me take a step back. And that's instead of saying you're wrong, I'm right, or you're being too aggressive, or you're the problem here, saying, actually, I might be the problem here. I'm not able to completely engage the way you need. One phrase I love is, it appears I'm not able to provide you the support or the service that you need right now. I'd like to be able to support you better. So let's take a 5-minute breather so I can step back and have a think about how I can support you better, instead of you are being rude and I want to leave this interaction, because that's what we're thinking. And when you do that, it makes it really difficult for them to now come back with aggression when you have pantsed yourself like that. And when you, instead of letting that ego go, you're wrong, it's the wrong there kind of attitude, taking that step back to breathe, pantsing yourself, when they come back, usually they step down a little bit, and it makes it much easier to build that relationship. And now if you're in a negotiation or you're in a meeting, it makes it much easier to meet back on common ground, because you haven't created those negative emotions in that person. If someone has created embarrassment, we don't want to collaborate with them, because now we feel that our ego has been attacked. And that is one thing. If someone attacks our ego, we just want to keep attacking theirs. We do not want to build that relationship. So it is a hard thing to do when that ego is saying, oh, just correct them, or just reflect it back, just to breathe and pants ourselves instead. But it is very effective for long-term influence.
I like that. I find myself doing that a lot, because I'm good at arguing, right? So I'll be like really into it, and I'm like, I'm winning this. And then I'm like, wait, I'm not really, I'm winning the battle and losing the war, right? And so I'll have to back up and go, you know, I'll maybe make a point and then go, you know what, all that aside though, I think it's admirable that you care so much about this. And like, I got to admit that I got wrapped up in being right about this, and none of what I said matters. And I remember, this is recent, this guy wrote back, wow, this took a wholesome turn. And I'm like, yeah, because otherwise, what am I doing? I'm arguing with somebody who I'm trying to like get something from on Reddit. I mean, none of it makes any sense, or via email. None of it makes any sense. And it's just like, okay, what am I, you basically have to get sight of your goal once again, which is like, yes, this person's business policy is stupid. And yes, I can be like, I'm going to tell my podcast audience not to buy from you, or what, but who, like, or I can be like, I'm actually trying to help you. Here's how I'm doing it. I'm just doing it the wrong way. I went about it the wrong way. What do you think is the best way to do this? And they're like, oh, you just wanted me to help you with this thing that you bought? Oh, God, I didn't even understand that. Like, sure, here's my whole like PDF on how this works. And it was just like, why the hell were we arguing about the finer points of this other thing that had nothing to do with either of our goals, because we
Yep.
were two dudes that, needed to just put them on the table and get them measured and then go on with our lives. So you
Yep.
pants yourself, which is, and unfortunately, that works exactly with the other,
I was thinking
the other
exactly.
analogy. So there's that. You should add that to your next edition of the book. Yeah,
I
you should
would
throw that in there.
possibly think about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, possibly think about it. Yes, you should possibly think about that. Depends what your publisher. Run it by the editor. See what they
Yes.
think.
Yeah. I'm not sure Matt Holt would love it, but you never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, exactly. Penguin Random House doesn't love dick metaphors in the books,
No,
but
and they are my
might tell.
distributor, so
I mean, look, they did publish The Subtle Art of Not Giving a by my friend Mark Manson, and that was on the cover. So,
yes.
I'm just saying.
So you never
Maybe
know.
one dick metaphor. Just one.
Maybe.
One dick metaphor per book. All right. So I'd love to talk about the way that dark hat con men use things like selectivity and exclusiveness to gain trust, and then give a white hat example of that. Because in the book, you give Bernie Madoff as a good example of selectivity and exclusiveness. And we can use things like this without robbing people of their life savings and investments.
Yep. So often when we say you have access to this, but not everybody else, only you, and for this really specific reason, you have access, it makes it feel scarce. And we know from Cialdini and years of research that as soon as something is scarce and not everybody has access to it, oh, we want it. We want it so much more because if we have it, that makes us have some kind of advantage of other people. And this is also why sales work so well. This sale is only on for 24 hours. If I don't do it now, I won't get it. So it becomes a scarce resource. When you are trying to build a relationship with someone, or say I'm offering access to this investment, if I say, look, I don't really give this opportunity to many people, but because you and I have a mutual friend, I'll give this opportunity to you. And what this does is we often trust via our network. So when we trust someone and that someone else trusts another person, we can kind of utilize the trust for our friend to ourselves. You don't know me, but because this other person has vouched for me, now you feel this sense of familiarity, you feel a sense of trust. So now when I say, look, because of our mutual friend, I'm going to give you access to this really exclusive thing, it now feels like, okay, well, this is a really trustworthy thing. For those two reasons. One, I really want it because it's scarce, and because I trust this person, therefore I trust you. And actually, I saw a friend of mine do this on Instagram this morning. They posted on their private story this big investment opportunity that they have. And they posted a second private story, so it's friends only, and saying, I am opening up 3 slots to this investment, but only to my close friends because it's such a good deal. I can't open this to everybody else. So now it's exclusive, and wow, it's on the private friends list.
Sure.
So people use that, and then often their intention is extremely negative. Now, this is a play on trustworthiness, right? Because the main factor for why we do something is because we trust it. If I'm going to invest in something and I'm going to invest a lot of money, the main factor is trust. I need to trust either the person or I need to trust the credibility of the thing. What social engineers are really, really good at is the perception of trust. And this is why scarcity and time restrictions are so effective, because when we're emotional, our emotional centers override our prefrontal cortex. And prefrontal cortex is where critical thinking happens. That's where I go, oh, is this a good idea? Oh, is everything really correct? And that's where we notice, that doesn't seem quite right. But when we're emotional, those processes often get overridden. That's why when we're in our emotions, we write that angry email without thinking about the consequences. So when our emotions are engaged, we're more likely to act impulsively. Now, that is really quick. So trust has 2 sides, just like 2 sides of a coin. We have the perception of being trustworthy, which is the nonverbals. How do I appear? That really quick, do they look like they're trustworthy? Now, that's the perception, that's the first side. We forget that trust has two sides. We have perception, which is opening the door, and then we have being trustworthy, which is staying in the room. Social engineers know that if they can get you to act quickly, they just need to appear trustworthy. They don't need to be it. Because if it's a long-term deal, if it's something that goes over time, it's very difficult for them to stay in that room because there are often cues that this is false, that they're not really trustworthy. So they use tactics to get you to act very quickly. So they're so good at appearing trustworthy. They're very composed. They use the right kind of language. They use great nonverbals to build connection. They have that whole image of this is legitimate. So you act really quickly and it's 12 hours and then it's gone. Okay, well, I haven't had time to actually confirm this is a trustworthy person, but I'm going to do it because it looks like it. So that's what social engineers are so good at, which is why when it comes to protecting yourself, obviously long cons are very, very difficult to test, but often these tactics of when someone asks you to do something very, very quickly, you have to remind yourself trust has two sides. We often feel like this person's trustworthy, but we have to remind ourselves, I couldn't possibly know that.
Right.
Because I haven't had enough time with them to actually confirm if they are trustworthy, because the only factor that confirms that is consistency of behavior over time. And if you act quickly, you couldn't possibly have confirmed that.
That's right. So when I used to sell training in my old company, I had this show or a version of this show. And so when people would call in, they would be like, oh, I feel like I've known you for years because I've listened to 1,000 hours of your voice or whatever, 700 hours. And that was really helpful. And then also it was a really expensive program. I think, our cheapest was like 6,000, our most expensive was like 9,000. So they usually didn't buy on the first phone call. Some people did. But instead of, if you act now, I'll give you $500 off. I was like, yeah, look, when they would be like, hey, I need some time to think about it, I would say something like, oh, yeah, no, I don't expect you to buy on this phone call, man. Like, take all the time you need. I would call other companies that offer something similar. Here's what I would ask them. And sometimes I go, no, if I buy this, I'm only buying it from you because I really, I like what you put out or all the free stuff on the podcast. Or they would say, oh yeah, I was going to call a competitor. Actually, what were those questions? And I'm like, here, I'll send you a PDF of what you should ask them. And of course, those competitors, they were terrible at this, right? They would be like, they'd call the competitor and they'd go, hey, I was calling Jordan Harbinger. And they go, oh, that guy's such a loser, right? And then be like, okay, well, I really like him. But anyway, I was wondering, do you provide accommodation if I do your program? No, you just need to get a hotel in the city. Okay, do you cover that? No. Anyway, do you want to buy now? If you do, I'll give you $500 off. And they're like, no. And they're like, look, man, last chance. Tomorrow the price goes up. And they're like, okay, bye. And then they would call me back a couple weeks later and be like, yeah, I did call those guys. Oh, how did it go? Yeah, not buying from them. Or they would tell me specifically that because that's how I got that exact example. And I was like, wow, these guys don't know what they're doing, right? They take a lead and they have the sort of what's funny is they're trying to use scarcity on somebody when really they have the scarcity mindset themselves, right? Like if this lead gets off the phone, they're never going to convert. So I've got to do whatever I can, bull crap, like fake time constraint, discounting, hey, if you go with them, that guy's a loser, like trying to just shame or whatever the person. And I'm like, if you had the mindset that you're the best option and that these people are smart enough to figure that out and just need a little nudge, you would be making millions of dollars a year. But instead, you view people as like dumb drones who, as soon as they hang up the phone, are going to get distracted and call somebody else or do something else.
It's a really common mistake I see that instead of focusing on it's not me versus you to the competitors, it's we all really have the same goal and it's just focusing on what you do well. When people aren't as confident that they do things well, a great tactic is everybody else is really terrible. And I remember I was coaching this student about a year ago, and he had developed an app. He was looking to get investment, and it was the first time he'd ever asked for investment. So he had run his debt cards by me. So these are the things that he's using to pitch why his app is so different. And the mistakes he made were the same mistakes that I see so often in people in negotiations or even in interviews, especially trying to get investment money of, here are all the competition, or here is all the competition, and this is why they are terrible. This is everything they're doing wrong. These are all the bad things, and this is why I'm the best. And I said, that is a really typical approach to take, but it's the wrong approach because it doesn't make you appear trustworthy. And we know from the literature that as soon as someone else tries to discredit another person, or if someone uses really aggressive language, instantly they become less trustworthy. And then by association, the information they're presenting is also less trusted. So it's not the most effective approach. The most effective approach is to say, these are the competitors. This is what they do great. These people are great at doing this. The thing they do lack, though, is this. And this is where I come in. And that is a much more effective approach.
Yeah, it was incredible how many competitors would say something negative. Guys I knew, and they'd be like, don't take it personally, man. It's all just part of the game. And I'm like, I don't take it personally. I just think you're doing it wrong. And I have the receipts to prove that because I'm making way more money than you are. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, so if it's just business, here's my business, here's your business. Maybe you should take some of my advice and stop being a dickhead. But it didn't, it worked out in my favor because I remember people going, well, that's pretty expensive. I could get, I'm going to call that guy. And I'm like, okay, when you call that guy, ask him these 3 things or these 5 things. And then they would call me back like, wow, okay, they failed all 5 of those tests. I'm like, what else did you ask? And of course, they didn't really have anything else to ask. They just wanted a better pitch, which they didn't get. And then when they asked their questions and they got the wrong answers to each of those questions, it was just a no-brainer. And it makes it great because it's hard to hack that. Like, yes, you could probably trick your competitors into doing something bad, but it's actually easy to provide a better product and or service and then point out the flaws or where your competitors are lacking and then have people go find that out for themselves. Like I can say they don't offer accommodation, they don't offer post-program tutelage or whatever. They don't offer. I'm like, no. I want you to go there and for them to tell you to your face that they don't offer any of the things that I just told you we give you.
Yeah.
I want them to tell you because otherwise you have to trust me and I have to be right about their product and service. No. Go straight to them and let them tell you why they are inferior to what we do and what we offer.
And that's the difference between taking the long road and the short road of if you want to get what you want and you think, okay, I'm going to get it. And anyone that gets in my way, I'm just going to get them out my way. And if I need to say that this is my information when it's someone else's, I'm going to do that because I'm going to get what I want at the expense of other people. And often those people, they're not as good at what they do because they're not as confident in their ability. They have to discredit other people or they're using other people's stuff. And I had a great example of this with a speaker. She was in the same kind of speaker circle as me, but whereas I produce my own material and I do my own research, I create my own frameworks, and she, on the other hand, listens to lots of other speakers, including myself, and will take their information and I say repackage it, but often just copy paste it to her.
Steal it.
Yes.
Exactly. Wow, that's bold.
It is. And often because she's great at anybody else that gets in my way, no, this is mine. She has been getting a lot of really big speeches and really big opportunities. So she took the short road. And often she's very, very good to it. Oh, this is what you want to hear. This is what I'm going to give you. The long road is the honest road of, no, actually, that wasn't mine. That was his. Like me and Joe Navarro, we will often send each other work. If someone has come to me, they want to interview me for this. And I'm like, actually, I think Joe is better suited. Go to him. And he does it to me. I lose opportunities sending them his way. He loses opportunities sending them my way. But it's the right thing to do, and we take the long road. And now we end up getting more because often we share things. So with the work that I do, I'll never tell you what you want to hear. I'll tell you what you need to hear. So I didn't get as many opportunities. My progress was much slower. And you think, gosh, if I just manipulated or if I did this, I'd get this, I'd get this. The thing with taking the short road, though, is you leave reputation behind. And when you leave people feeling like you have done something against them, or you have been unjust, or you have been unfair, they don't want to help you. When you
Right.
leave people feeling like you were fair and cooperative, when they get opportunities to help you, often they do. So you then get opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. You may not have gotten that initial win. And you see these people using the negative tactics, but reputation comes back to you. And then if you kind of manipulated your way there, you're not necessarily as good. So you may get the opportunity, but you don't get called back. You don't get invited back. And when you take that short road, the wins you get, you might get them. But that person that's taken the long road, eventually they overtake you. So I think it's always better to take that long road, because eventually, because you leave people feeling good, you leave people wanting to help you rather than wanting to tear you down. As soon as you leave people feeling like you have hurt them or done something against them, people are very dangerous. If you leave people hurt, you never know when they're going to try and hurt you back. It's always better to just try and do the right thing and try and do it honestly. And if it isn't your work, or it's like, if I don't provide that service, I don't pretend I provide that service.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just provide it honestly.
So if pro social engineering skills like we're discussing are so effective, why do criminals and con men use the negative manipulative route? Because it's faster? Is that the only reason?
Because it's faster, and because they don't care about building a relationship. So if I'm just focused on getting what I want, those short-term tactics, they work beautifully. Because if I want to build genuine connection, I have to invest a lot of time. Building rapport is hard, because I actually have to be trustworthy. It's actually, I don't have to just pretend I'm organized. I have to be organized to get the job. I don't have to pretend I have your best interest. I actually have to try and figure out what it is that you need and how can I provide you value. It takes time. It takes investment. It's much harder to do. And I may not get as bigger wins as quickly. If I just care about getting the thing, I'm going to use the negative ones. I may get more money really, really quickly. I don't care about that lasting relationship.
The thing is, though, if you look at this over time, you still get better results over time, even if it's a little bit harder. So, like, I always thought about this, right? When I was a kid, I was always into like some shit, basically. Like, I was like, oh, I can generate credit card numbers, and they don't. You have the internet, so I can put it in, and it passes the checksum, and then when they reconcile on Friday, I'm long gone with the pizza, whatever it is, right? I used to do that, and then I was like, there's risk here, and I'm making people feel bad, and that sucks. But also, like, wouldn't it just be better if I made a bunch of money? I could buy pizza. Right. And so that was like kind of my thought process. And now that I'm older, I'm glad, because I don't want to go to federal prison. But also, it's just easier to build a real business, even if it takes longer. And that's what I kind of never understood about small time or what con men and whatnot. Because I'm like, man, it's actually easier if you had put all this energy into making a real product or service. It might have taken you an extra 18 months to hit it, but you would have a viable business that you could have sold for $20 million instead of stealing $200,000 from a bunch of dumbass kids on TikTok and then getting caught. And now you're going to like these people who do the PPP loans, right? They get the PPP loans and they buy a Lamborghini. And I'm like, dude, you are going to get caught, and then you are going to go to federal prison where they don't have parole because you wanted to flex on Instagram. What you could have done is continue to run the business that you already have and save a little bit of that money, and then rent a Lamborghini, and you'd be in the exact same spot right now, except you wouldn't be going to jail, right? And it's just like, I don't understand it. These people they're not dumb. They thought of the PPP loan people are dumb. Don't get me wrong. But the people who run these scams, they're not dumb. They created a very involved scam to take over people's, Facebook accounts and then sell them to other people online to spam people. And I'm like, what if you just ran a legitimate social media company? You'd make way more money. And you wouldn't be working with a bunch of frickin' thieves all the time and getting banned and getting arrested. I mean, it's just like, I never really got it. Do these people have an inability to think long term, or are they? It's almost like a lack of confidence. Like I can't make a real business. I'm not smart enough. But what I can do is trick people. I can't think of the explanation. It eludes me, because if you think long term and you map this out, you lose short term every single time doing something illegal or unethical. You do.
Yep. So it's a really common psychological phenomena that if we get something now, the value feels greater than if we get it in the future. And this is something that we all have. So if you say to someone, do you want $150 in 3 months, or do you want $100 next week? Most people are like, I want $100 next week, because the value feels higher. And when we think about having to wait for something, often there is that fear of not getting it. And it, that wait time, we think about, oh, well, I could use it for this or that. And it's also very impulsive. The value of things, the sooner we get them, it feels higher.
But this is stupid people thinking, Abbie. You're like, or am I the idiot? Feel free to tell me if I'm the idiot, because what you're basically explaining to me in terms that are much better than what I would have put. This is basically payday loans. Hey man, do you want your paycheck 2 weeks early? Yeah, great. It's going to cost you 25% of your check. Well, that sounds like a problem for future Jordan. I don't envy that guy.
And it is a really common thing, and that's why loan sharks are so effective, because they're like, you know what? People think, oh, well, in the future, things will be better. In the future, things will be different. Year. Exactly. And but it creates this kind of buffer from... Exactly. And that's why the mindset is so important. Like, to have this mindset of future thinking. Yeah. A lot of people are just so focused on the present right now. And actually, there's a lot of advice about being so present and not always being, focused on the future, really focusing on the right now. And I don't really stand by that mindset. I think it's important to be present generally and every day, but we should always be future focused, because the mindset of, will this thing I'm doing right now take away from future me, is important. And this mindset of, I really want this thing, but am I willing to sacrifice for it? Because that is what it is. So if I want you to do something and I use manipulation, I can get you to do it really, really quickly. Otherwise, I have to sacrifice my time and energy in building this relationship. I'm not willing to sacrifice my time, not willing to make that investment. I want it now. So it feels like I get more value doing it now because I'm putting less investment in. And it's that mindset of just the quick wins. It's kind of like a high that we chase. We do this thing, we get a really quick win, we go up. And now we haven't had a win, so we need another really quick win. We need that dopamine, the anticipation of getting another win really closely now. We kind of chase that. And it makes us also, for someone who has got narcissistic or psychopathic tendencies, not is a narcissist or psychopath, they're kind of a different league, but most of us do have these tendencies, but people that really do have them and crave power, when you get what you want at the expense of another person, it can make you feel above them. So if you have this kind of anger at the world, or this self-righteousness of, I deserve this, I'm entitled to this, when you get those things from someone else at their expense, it makes you feel really powerful. And think about people who maybe they go home to a relationship and they don't have a very good relationship. Maybe their wife tells them what to do. They don't feel like a man. So now they can go on their job and I can have this power over you. I can take your savings. Now I feel like this strong man. And then I come home and I don't feel like a man, so I need this outlet. And it's that seeking of power. It makes me feel like I'm better than you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember a long time ago, I used to work in Detroit, and I used to work in the hood, and we would meet all these young guys who were dealing drugs and in gangs and stuff like that. And sometimes they were on the other end of things, but sometimes we had to work with them to keep security in the area, whatever, especially gangs. And I remember there was one guy, I was like, you're smart. What are you doing? And he was selling drugs and in a gang, and he's like, this is how you survive in my area. And I'm like, dude, you're thinking so small. You're thinking like, how am I going to get my next sale? How am I going to get another block of territory? This is all bullshit. Like, this is your whole world. This is all bullshit. I drive here from a place called Birmingham. It's near Bloomfield. Have you heard of this? And he's like, that's where the rich people live. And I was like, yeah, okay. I don't, I am not one of those people, but like, I know all those people. They're my neighbors. But like, you're thinking so small. Like you're thinking of your literal neighborhood in Detroit. Get out of this BS place and do something with your life. And he's like, I can't. And I'm like, I remember talking with this guy for a long period of time, because I'm just standing around waiting for people to start throwing full beer cans at 2:00 in the morning at this club, right? And he's there selling drugs to people in this club. And I remember after a while he went to jail and he came out, and then he's right back to it. And I was like, you realize eventually you're just going to get killed, right? And he's like, well, that's kind of how it works, or I'll go to jail. And I was like, so what is your plan? And it was all short-term thinking. And I felt bad for him because everyone around him was all short-term thinking. And I was just like, man, you would be better off bagging groceries at Target long-term, because you won't be dead and you would eventually be able to do something with yourself because you're not an idiot. And I don't even understand how this happened, but he ended up, well, he went to jail again, of course, but he ended up going back to school, which he had dropped out of high school. He got his GED, I think maybe in prison or possibly afterwards. And he ended up doing some kind of, not quite engineering, but like something adjacent to that. And I'm like, it's almost like a miracle, right? So he eventually, it's not like some people can't think long term. They've just been conditioned not to.
It's also when we're in these situations where it feels like everything is so chaotic, we get stuck in survival mode. And his situation, it sounds like he's just trying to survive. So we get this mentality of,
yeah,
I
he didn't
just
have parents
need
or
to
anything.
get, and it's a really sad thing. I do a lot of volunteering with the Innocent Lives Foundation. So we see a lot of children who have gone through really horrible circumstances and people who have gone through trauma. They're stuck in survival mode. So every single day, they don't think about the future. It's just about getting through that day. And if you're just thinking about, I need to survive, I need to survive, I need to survive, you don't think about, well, if I do this tactic, it may come back to bite me in a month, in a year, because you're just thinking about, I need to get through this. I need to get through this interaction. I need to get through this day. I need to survive. So we get stuck in that loop of future us. We'll regret what we're doing, but we don't care about future us because right now I just need to survive. We get in this survival loop. That's why shifting the mindset of accountability, we all have accountability, and sometimes our situations feel like I have no other escape, but we do. There are often other options and routes we can take, but it's just feeling like we don't have any other options. And this is the victim mentality too. I see it with a lot of people that have, not in the situation that the young man you described, but these are people that have education or have access to education, and they might have access to parents that have money, or just they have a generally okay situation, but I can't do it because of this. Because I remember when I was in my undergrad degree, there was an individual, and she was saying about, my friend, she doesn't get very good grades on her essays and she's always really late. And I was like, you need to make sure you hand things in on time. And she was like, oh, yeah, but she's dyslexic. So, you got to give her, the benefit of the doubt. I'm severely dyslexic. I've never handed anything in not early because I take accountability. And it's like everybody has something that holds them back. You take accountability for it and you figure out a way around it. But if you go, oh, well, this is the thing that I'm now going to use, I can't do it because of this. You won't be able to do it because you've now adopted that as a crutch. Now, this is going to stop you being able to be successful because you've said that it's going to stop you. So a lot of it is just mindset that we go into things with.
Yeah, this is interesting. Your book, by the way, is full of practical exercises and drills, none of which I have covered on this episode. But it's fine. It turned out even better than I think it would have if I'd just gone through chapter by chapter. But I'd love to talk about the self-disclosure. This example really stuck with me, the Disney example, but also because I feel like I've been using this in my life a lot. Ever since I was young, all the way through adulthood, this idea of self-disclosure, not the same thing as pantsing yourself, but kind of the other side maybe of that same coin.
Yeah, so self-disclosure is a tactic that I found to be really, really effective in creating feelings of closeness. So self-disclosure is, instead of one person sharing, say you're asking them questions like an interview, self-disclosure is where it's mutual. So mutual self-disclosure. And this is a tactic that I train for federal officers to use when they're trying to elicit a confession or create cooperation. Instead of just asking questions, they give some information. Because if you want someone to provide you something sensitive, say, I want something about your childhood, or I want you to tell me something that might be a very difficult thing to talk about, the best way to get that information is to provide them something, to show them, hey, I'm not asking you to do something I'm not doing. So one thing that I would say to my clients when I'm coaching is, say I have a federal officer and he knows that the individual he's going to be interviewing has had a very difficult past, and part of that past may be the reason for why they're doing things, but they're not talking about their history. Say, you know, maybe they had a very difficult relationship with their parents. Don't say, what's your relationship like with your parents? Start and disclose your relationship with your parents. So you could be lying. Like I say this to the officers, you don't necessarily need to be telling the truth. But if you say, you know, I am sorry, I'm a little late. I was just on the phone to, my dad, you know, it's not been a great day, you know, and you kind of disclose, you know, there's some family difficulties. This you wouldn't use in an investigative interview, but say you're about to go into a meeting. You now disclose a little bit of information about yourself, something that you know would matter to them. You kind of pave that way. So now you've kind of set the scene of, okay, I've disclosed something about myself, and now it kind of opens the door for them to disclose about themselves. And then you validate their information. And then you disclose a little bit more about yourself. And then they do. And then you give them the reins. So that's kind of the tactic of, you pave the way by disclosing a little bit of information about yourself, not too vulnerable. You kind of start off at kind of a basic level. And then they often match. They disclose a bit about themselves. And you know you want to get really deep. So you now go a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit deeper, and disclose a little bit of information. And then they will often match that, because now you've created this kind of matching vulnerability. And you don't want to keep doing this. You don't want to keep disclosing more about yourself if you want that information from them. But you're just opening the door for them to feel safe enough, because what it does is it humanizes you. So, for example, going back to the investigative interviewing, if you want to learn about their childhood and you drop a little bit of information about yours, you've now not only opened the door, but you've humanized yourself. Now you're not on opposing sides of, you're asking me questions and you just want my information. Now, hey, I'm relating to you. So it's kind of bridging that gap now. And it's been shown to be one of the most effective techniques for creating feelings of closeness. And when we feel closer to someone, we understand them, it increases how likely we are to cooperate with them.
I see. So we're sort of, are we sharing vulnerability are we extending trust to others so that they extend trust to us? Is that kind of the idea behind this?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
It shows, hey, if say you're in a negotiation, often we go in with the mindset of, this person is just kind of in the way of the goal. We see them as the opposition. It's a really natural thing that we see us as the in-group, them as the out-group, because we have difference in goals. I want this, you want that. Okay, so we're opposing parties. When we start to disclose information about ourselves and we humanize ourselves in that way, you kind of stop seeing them as the opposing party and you see them as more like you.
I see.
And it bridges that gap of, hey, I'm being vulnerable with you. And as soon as someone is vulnerable, it increases that perception of trustworthiness. And it also, if you're really nervous to share something and you're like, oh, I would never do that. And someone goes, oh, I actually have done that. And you go, oh, okay, well, maybe I've done that too.
I see.
One thing that I have found that stops people reporting when they have fallen for a scam is the shame. They pretend that, oh, I've never done this. So often when I'm training or doing a talk, because I'm an expert in this field, I'll say, hey, I train people not to do this. I did it. Who else has done it? And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I might have done it. If you just start and say, who has fallen for this? People are like, I wouldn't. But it opens the door of, hey, we are all human. I'm human just like you. I've done this. And it makes it feel safer for them to then disclose their information.
Can't this, a lot of people listening right now are probably like, that sounds terrifying. Can't this be used against me if I start disclosing things? What do you think about that?
That's why you need to be careful of what you disclose. So mutual self-disclosure doesn't mean oversharing. You don't have to be like, this is my trauma that I have been through.
Right.
Here you go. And then just assume they're going to give you all of their information too. It's about appropriate information sharing. So with the federal officers, they won't sit down with a suspect and being like, oh, so you're abused as a child. I was too abused as a child. You know, it's not quite that level of disclosure. It's appropriate. So they might share something about their personal life, something appropriate, but just to humanize themselves. You say, you know, I was listening to your other interview, and it seems like, you know, you and your girlfriend have had really difficulties communicating here. I know what that's like. You know, I am always saying the wrong thing. You know, I come home late at night, I'm stressed, I'm always saying the wrong thing to my partner. You know, you like that too? And it kind of opens that door in an appropriate manner. And you'll be able to see for your context what is appropriate and what is not. But oversharing and just giving loads and loads of information and going really, really deep is not effective. And that's why it's important to kind of level it. You don't want to start sharing something really personal. You kind of open the door. And then again, you validate that information and you let them take the reins. You don't just keep sharing more about you if it's clear that they're not reflecting back also.
Right. Give me the Disney example, because this was kind of like a nonverbal self-disclosure that did a lot of heavy lifting in a more casual situation.
Yep. So this was often if someone is slow, it gets really frustrated. Oh, just get on with it. Get on with it. But this lady, she had trainee on her badge and she was struggling. So because you see it, it's kind of the nonverbal self-disclosure. The same way that when you're driving and you're a learner, you put a learner badge on because you're basically disclosing, hey, I'm still trying. For me, I'm not very familiar with how this works. Please give me the benefit of the doubt. So it's kind of that nonverbal self-disclosure, and people are really receptive to it. When you say, hey, I don't fully know what I'm doing yet, but I am trying, people usually are a little bit more, oh, it's okay, I understand. And you see this, like, I've seen it in queues where people are like, oh, come on. And they're being pretty aggressive. And then the person will say, sorry, this is my first day. And then oh, no problem.
Take your time.
So sorry.
Yeah.
And all that aggression goes because, again, it's that when someone is in the way of what we want, we just see them as the obstacle. And we see their lack of ability to get us what we want as their fault. And it frustrating us and it creates anger. And we just see, I want to get the goal. And we forget that other people have their lives too. And we kind of we don't even consider that. It's really hard when we're in that emotional state to engage in that empathy. And when someone, pants themselves, whether they have the trainee badge or say, it's my first day, it brings us back to humanizing them. And we're like, ooh, we almost feel bad for how negative we felt towards them. And then it's like you said, often it now makes us want to help them more. Like that person of, oh, now, I'm going to buy all your courses. Now I'm going to do this because we feel bad.
Yeah, this is something I could probably talk about for hours, but I remember often, man, especially when I was working in Detroit, you'd accidentally step on someone's foot, and I was wearing combat boots, and they're wearing like nice new shoes, and then they look at you like you have deliberately disrespected me, because stepping on someone's foot is like a big deal down there, and in kind of these certain areas where your new shoes are everything, and if someone doesn't do anything about it, So I just remember going, I always had to do this. I would say, sorry, man, these boots are the wrong size, and I've been stepping on my own feet. It's not just you, and I'm so sorry. And these guys are like, the security guy just apologized to me for stepping on my foot. And it's like, they don't even know what to do with it, because they're like, oh, he's challenging me. This punk stepped on my new shoes. Well, do I hit him? Because then the other security guys are going to come after me. No, I'm just going to get in his face and start yelling. And they're like, what the hell, man? And I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. These boots are the wrong size. They just gave them to me. Yeah. And I've been stepping on my own feet. I'm stepping on your feet. I'm so sorry. Have you had a good night so far, though, man? And they're like, oh, they don't even know how to handle that because nobody apologizes down there because it's a sign of weakness. But I'm like, I am armed. I'm not weak. I will, I'm the one with the gun, right? And I have 3 giant men behind me who are going to back me up. So the fact that I'm apologizing is like, it doesn't even compute. It really just shakes everything. It takes the snow globe and shakes it up all over again.
I found it to be one of the most effective tactics in business to not take other people's behavior personally and emotions personally. I remember I was recently in New Mexico as an expert witness on an attempted homicide case. And I was there for a nonverbal analysis. And one of the things that served me really well as an expert witness is I don't take anything personally. And that's what the opposition count on. So their entire job is to try and discredit you. And as I train the Secret Service, their approach to trying to discredit me, because they couldn't discredit my qualifications, they couldn't discredit my practical achievements. So they went for, well, Trump was shot at an official rally, so you don't train them very well. As that's my fault that Trump was shot because I provide training to Secret Service. And I remember after giving my testimony, one of the people on my side had said, did you not find that really offensive that they kind of tried to say that? It just really belittles the work you do. It was such a just absurd approach. And I said, no, not at all, because their whole job is to try and discredit me. If they didn't do a good job, then they wouldn't be doing their job very well. I treat them exactly the same as I treat the people on my side, because I don't take any of that personally. It's not about me. They're doing a role. And having that mentality when they're using those approaches against you and they're trying to get you into your negative emotions so you don't use critical thinking, when you're like, oh, I'm not taking offense by this, it stops you from blocking that critical thinking. So I stay calm. I'm able to make my points very clearly and logically because I'm not stuck in that survival mode and I'm not fighting with my negative emotions and that anger that's blocking my critical thinking. And if you take that into meetings or interviews or negotiations and you stop taking everything they do so personally, and you remember they have a goal and they see you as the thing in the way of their goal, and actually just focus on their emotions really have nothing to do with me. It has more to do with them. It is a really effective tool.
Man, being an expert witness would be, I think, a lot of fun because I personally, something about being cross-examined or having opposing counsel talk to me, it just lights a fire. And I love it because I remember so many times, I mean, they try to discredit you and they try and get you on the back foot. And I remember one guy was like, is this the signature on the document? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, how do you know? And I said, I watched him sign it. And they would go, well, I have his driver's license right here and the signature is different. And I would go, I don't know. I'm pretty old. Can you come up here and show me? I can't see that far. And he got up and walked up to me and the judge, and I looked at the judge and I go, is this how we do handwriting analysis? Someone just holds up the driver's license and then takes a look at it and doesn't show anyone else. And the judge goes, no, that is not how this is done. And you, counselor, should know that to him. And he just like slinks back down in his seat. And I was like, Judge, I'm sorry. What am I supposed to do with that? And she goes, disregard and strike it from the record. It was a waste of the court's time. And the jury was just like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, dude.
Yeah. And that is
not the flex you thought it was it? No, I don't think so.
And that is a perfect example of you acting in critical thinking and staying calm and him being in survival mode because critical thinking is blocked. And whenever I always say that if you want to be a really good debater, you have to have the ability that someone is shouting in your face and you don't take it personally. Because the second you get emotional about something, you don't make good choices.
It's true. I've seen this happen when I'm a witness. I've witnessed a break-in and the guy, this guy had broken in and started stealing bikes and I was there. The cops caught him. I witnessed the whole thing. And I remember the prosecutor was like, what did he look like? And I'm like, he looked like the defendant. And they're like, no. Like, what did he look like? And I described what he was wearing, and they would go, aha, what ethnicity was he? And I'm like, I don't know. He was wearing a mask. And they're like, so you can't even be sure it was him? And I'm like, no, I'm sure it was him. And he's like, well, what makes you so sure? And I was like, because I watched him get dragged out onto the fence by the police, and he was the only person in the building, which was well lit. And I saw the whole thing. And then again, he was like, shit, I didn't know that you were going to answer the question like that. And it's like, dude, cross-examination 101. Never ask a question that you don't know the answer to already. And I don't know what it is, but like having a judge up there, a jury watching you, and then watching somebody step into your trap and totally blow it is like the best feeling in the world.
And that's if you can stay calm, because it is a very difficult ability. When people around you get emotional, you can watch them make mistakes. And when you stay calm, often the people trying to push you and push you and push you, they get more aggressive and more aggressive because their tactic against you isn't working. So it works in your favor if you can really maintain that level of calmness and critical thinking. And again, okay, I'm not taking your emotions or your attack personally. It makes them more frustrated, so they make more mistakes.
Yeah, it's just, there's something, I don't know what it is, man, about it. I love it because the stakes are high, I think, and there is like an adrenaline thing going, and you're like, is this going to work? And then it does. It's just, I don't know. There's something about it. I can't get over it. But anyway, look, enough about that. I think a lot of people can relate. And even if you're not in court, there's a feeling like that you get doing something that you love, and that scratches whatever itch I have. Before we go, you had an interesting tangent in the book about Disneyland using environmental influence for social engineering. Can you speak to that? Because I found this endlessly fascinating. I would love to do a whole show about this if I could find somebody who knew Disneyland well enough to discuss it.
Well, it's called embodied cognition. So embodied cognition is
embodied cognition?
Embodied cognition.
Okay.
So we are connected to our environment. So the sights, smells, sounds around us affect our inner workings. So our psychological processes, like my thoughts, feelings, emotions. My emotions, thoughts, feelings affect my outer world. So my behaviors, how I interact with people, my perceptions. And we know that there is this mind-body connect because there's been some amazing studies. For example, even just basic of if there wasn't this mind-body connect, no placebo would ever work. And there is this great study done where they had these yogurts, and they were same yogurt, but one was labeled high fat, one was labeled low fat. And when people ate the high-fat yogurt, it increased ghrelin in the stomach, which is the satiety hormone telling us we're full. And if there was no connection between this biological effect and psychological effect, no ghrelin would be released. So we know that there is something going on with the mind where we think something and it changes the biology. But also when there's something on the outside, it changes the psychology and it can change the biology. So there's no argument that there is this effect of the outside affects the inside affects the outside. Places like Disney know this, and they use this really, really effectively. So if I can create a smell that is warm and comforting, it makes you feel warm and comforting. And when we feel positive, we're more trusting. We spend more. So if I can create this environment that is conducive to feeling really good, I can make you spend more. So what they will do is, if you go to Disney World or Disneyland, it smells like freshly baked cookies. It smells amazing. And they do this because they trigger those senses and they make you feel good. So you feel more positive and you spend more money.
Even though you cross a moat to get in, so it's like leaving reality.
It is.
Crossing the moat to get into Disneyland.
And it's all created on purpose. Where you cross that moat, all the sights, all the sounds, all the smells is kind of like otherworldly. It brings you out of that outside world. And all of it is to create this feeling of community and positive feeling. Because when you feel positive, you spend more money.
Right. There's another kind of famous thing that they do with the underground tunnels, right? So you have the pirate area in the Alice in Wonderland area in the Snow White area or whatever, but you don't want to see a dwarf walking through the pirate area, and you don't want to see stormtroopers on their lunch break walking through, I don't know, Snow White or whatever, right? So they built this system of tunnels to help the staff essentially get around. Also, they don't want you to see Snow White with her head off, and it's like a middle-aged man or whatever, whoever's in there.
They have
right?
also done it so the bins where they collect the trash, they come from the bottom under the tunnel, so you never see someone collecting rubbish on the ground because it would ruin the image. It's this fairy tale that they're creating. So those tunnels is where they get the rubbish from underground. So you never see someone ruining this image of we're in a different world.
It's really fascinating. I think I told the story the other day, but I remember they do such a good job with. I saw a kid crying. Might have been my own, not saying. And because the ride was too scary because the dumb parents, which were definitely wasn't me, took them on a ride that they were not ready for. And one of the Disney princesses was like, "What's wrong, princess?" And daughter was like, looking up through the tears, like, "What do you mean? And what's wrong? Was this ride too scary?" And I was like, Dad might have taken her on Magic Mountain when she wasn't ready for, and they were like, "Oh, let's do something fun together." And she got, I don't know where this came from, but she went and got, I guess they have authority to just go and get a balloon somewhere, like a Mickey balloon for free. And they gave it to her. And then they were like, "What else do you want to do? Do you want to go on another ride?" And she was like, "Come on, Dad," and took my daughter's hand. And we walked to another ride. She cut in front of everybody. And my daughter got like on some kid ride. And I was like, wow. This took this kind of, oh no, I don't like Disneyland, it's scary moment, and turned it into Snow White gave me a balloon and took me to the front line of, I can't remember, Alice in Wonderland, something. And it was like just rescuing this amazing, by the time you're done, you're like, I don't care that the tickets were $120. Exactly. I got blown away by this experience.
Yeah, they keep you in that state of everything feels magical because they know that is the optimal state to spend.
Yes.
And they don't want any negative emotion because, okay, well, now I don't trust it and now I don't want to spend. They want to make sure that everything is perfectly created and crafted for this image and these emotions. So they're going to do everything they can. They do it so well with the environment, the sounds, like I said, the people, even them staying in character for every single moment. The underground, the no rubbish and no trash on the streets and cleaning up underground. It is so perfectly crafted because that's the perfect environment where you're like, I just spent thousands of dollars. Who cares? I feel great.
Yes, it's a difference between overpaying at the airport where you're just getting screwed and you have to rationalize it and you take it because you're like, whatever, I'm at the airport, and overpaying at Disneyland where you don't have to go, but you're happy to go there and overpay by 10 times. But when you buy a Caesar salad that's prepackaged at the airport, you resent it. And it's like, it's the difference between those two things. And it's really incredible how Disney engineers it. Again, I would love to do a whole show on that. I don't know who's even authorized at Disney to discuss how they do this because some of it is, supposed to be trade secret, hush hush, magical. Yeah. So Abbie, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is really interesting stuff. Again, the book has a ton of practicals that we didn't even get to here because we were diving in the deep cuts. And I appreciate you coming along for the ride.
And thank you so much for having me.